public doesn't identify and make the call and treat, by the time we get there, 5-10 minutes later, it's too late. I'm Mike Ferguson. I'm president and founder of Lifesaver Learning Incorporated, a American Heart Association training center that's been around about coming up on 33 years. We do training for the general public and healthcare professionals.
What do you look for if someone is interested in healthcare?
A lot of our instructors over the years, they were off-duty paramedic, firefighters, flight crew members, nurses, and people that are in the healthcare profession. And that was how I staffed my world as far as Lifesaver Learning. With the shortage of paramedic and firefighters and that, they get all the hours they want, working extra shifts and so on. And I started it's been about 5 years ago, I started using students. But when I look at somebody in a classroom, a lot of them are recruited right out of the classroom. They have a personality that just kind of exudes. There's certain people you come up and they give off a sense that these people have something special. I can teach anybody to teach the courses and that type of thing, but if you don't have the personality to deliver the interpersonal skills in that's something that is God-given. So as far as people that want to get into this profession, I think you have to have a passion for what you're going to do. It's not for everybody. I think a good starting point is when you get into the EMT classes is a good stepping point before you get too engaged to go through the paramedic training, but it tests the waters in terms of if this is something you're up for when you go out and ride in the ambulance, see if it's something you want to do.
What got you interested in the medical field?
Well, by trade, I've been a paramedic for the last 48 years. I've always had a passion to teach, so 47 of those years that I've been a paramedic, of 48 years, I've always taught. And it just always seemed to be a good complement. I learned it, I do it, and I teach it, so it reinforced that. In fact, when I went in the military, I went in as intelligence specialist. Recruiter had a pretty good way of manipulating that idea where my talents were. That was the furthest thing from my abilities, but apparently they were short in that area, so I went intelligence specialist. I had James Bond pictured as far as, hey, this is going to be a great life. And when I got into it and realized that wasn't it, got a top secret clearance, started into school, and 2 weeks into school, it was very intensive, completely different from anything I thought it was going to be. I got Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and that was my first near-death experience that I had. And I was so impressed with the corpsmen, the nurses, the physicians that took care of me, nursed me back to health, that was a transformation, something I'd never ever considered, healthcare. When I was released from the hospital, I went back to tech school, and they said, you're too far behind, so you can retrain or wait 6 months. And that's when I decided, that this is it. That was a revelation I never even considered.
Why is education of the public important?
So I knew long ago that we needed to continue educating the public, and in doing so, the better job they do of identifying a problem, calling 911 hit speaker, initiating compressions, ventilations, early defibrillation, stop the bleeding, use of an EpiPen and or Narcan for drug overdose, which is all part of the first aid training. If the public doesn't identify and make the call and treat, by the time we get there, 5-10 minutes later, it's too late. A number of years, I've logged a little over some 17,000 calls, some 500 cardiac arrests, and of those 500 dead people, we've had 125 survivors. And it wasn't me that saved them, it was the public. Because we're looking at most people that are in sudden cardiac arrest have about a 1 to 8 minute time frame. About 90% of those people in cardiac arrest need to be defibrillated. That's the essence of having AEDs readily available. Because CPR slows down brain cell heart muscle death, but as far as converting the heart for most adults, it's probably not going to have a good outcome. Initially calling, getting EMS there with the advanced availability as soon as possible, then initiating compressions with the second an AED is available. That's a high priority to hook it up within the first 1 to 8 minutes. And if it works along those lines of CPR, early defibrillation, by the time we get there, we have something to work with. If that hasn't been done, we have very few outcomes that are going to be a positive. It's part of the AED in the public is you can't hurt anybody with an AED. It won't let you hurt them unless you hit them in the head with it. But other than that, an AED is intended to shock the patient, and that's all it's going to do. So if we aren't shocking or talking to somebody, we need to be doing compressions. Because here's the deal, a lot of those patients are drunk, they're overdoses or what have you, and when you're working on them, if they don't need the compressions, I'll let you know. Never call late. Your most important is always call early EMS. You call EMS, we respond, we don't transport, there's no bill generated. So I like to emphasize that to the public, that don't ever base it on your ability to call. You'll never regret calling early, but you will regret calling late. Good Samaritan law for the state of Kansas requires you to call 911. If you do stop and render aid, then stay there until we arrive for continuity of care, but it's the early intervention of the public by making the call and treatment that's providing all these successes out there, because we have something to work with to get to hospital.
Didn't you help with the first Andover tornado?
Yeah, back in the day, 30 years ago, I worked for LifeWatch at the time when the Andover tornado, I think it took 17 lives during that awful event. You know, I worked the area predominantly where the trailer park used to be, and we were doing body recovery at that point. Sad day, to say the least, in terms of the destruction that, you know, these tornadoes can provide. That's why, looking out my door, this last event we had, we're straight east of Andover YMCA, 2 miles straight west of there, and looking out, saw that same type of tornado there that was like, this is going to happen again, but it was 2 miles east of us, thank God. And the time it hit the Andover YMCA, then hit the transformers across the street, everything went black. And thank God for Evergy, they had everything up and running at least 4 hours later from our perspective.